All right, that's great, Calvin. Thank you very much, Calvin. Well, all right, aviators, welcome. It's Friday. It's April 2nd. We're back here with another Up and Away live stream brought to you by Project AVIATE. Opening the live stream was Calvin with an amazing Rickroll. We hope you enjoyed it. April Fool's was yesterday, but we couldn't help ourselves. So, anyway, welcome to this Up and Away live stream brought to you by all of us here, Project AVIATE. We're going to be completing the checklist series and going over how to land and shut down our airplane now that we've covered how to take off or start up our airplane, taxi, take off, cruise, manage our thrust, and all of that using all the fancy procedures that come with all of those stages of flight. And before we get into anything, we're excited to tell you that next week, I guess we're not excited to tell you, we're really going to miss you because next week we're not having a lesson, it's spring break, so next Friday there won't be a lesson. Our lessons will resume 2 weeks, 2 Fridays from now. So that would be what's 14 plus 2? 16?
14 plus 2 is 6.
16.
16.
Sorry,
April
16.
16th. That's I think that's the day we're resuming. Yeah. Well, anyway, that should be what's happening there. And
Yes, April 16 is correct.
Yep. Cool. And also, in case you're new here to the channel, you just found us, please, we would greatly appreciate it if you would touch down on the subscribe and like buttons. And I just realized this is weirdly stretched, but I guess I'll fix that later. Anyway, let's just dive right into the lesson. So we're over here at Renton Municipal Airport in the Seattle area. Let me fix this. There we go. Yeah, so we're in the Renton Municipal. We're at Renton Municipal in the Seattle area. Airport code is KRNT, or if you already know the aviation alphabet phonetics, Kilo Romeo November Tango. We're going to go over that in a future lesson, actually, when we talk about communicating with air traffic control. But as you can see, nice airport right by the water behind us, and we've got a little hill to the right. So that'll pose a fun challenge for us. We're going to actually go ahead and do a full flight here to actually get to our landing and shutdown phase. So let's just jump right into it. We have a cold and dark cockpit, so let's go ahead and start the plane up, make the yoke disappear. Remember, yeah? What happened? So, gotta get our master switches on. Remember that? All right, get our fuel pump on, ready to prime the engine. So we're gonna go ahead and mixture rich for a few seconds, and then pull it out, turn off the fuel pump. And before we start our engines, make sure beacon lights are on, nav lights are on, and turn on the avionics as well. You don't necessarily have to, they just bring up these displays. Good to have, I guess. We're gonna go over how to use them in a future lesson. And start the engine. Right, left, both, and start. Wait for the engines to cough up, and then mixture full rich. And our engines are started. Alright, let's go ahead and remember how we showed you this in the last lesson, how the heading indicator is powered by a vacuum, whereas the compass on the center is powered by a magnet, your magnetic compass, so we need to align them. That's why I have this little warning saying it's not aligned. So let's align them right now. This shows us at a heading of around, if we look here, increasing, going to the left is increasing in heading, so this would be heading 15155 degrees, around there. Let's go ahead and align our little heading indicator as follows. So 155 degrees, just like that. We're good to go there. And we're about to take off. We're already on the runway here. So let's also get our landing lights going. Remember, we need landing lights for takeoff. It's a little weird. And our strobe lights as well. This will tell us, strobe lights are also telling people that we're about to take off. So need those on as well. Now finally, let's go ahead and do our engine run-up. Quickly, what are the run-up procedures that we should go over, Steven? Oh, what happened here?
So
Technical difficulties.
So we should just do the engine run-up. So we test the engines, the magnetos. You can go ahead and perform that on your
All right,
screen.
so I'm gonna go ahead and advance throttles to 1,000 RPM. Sorry, not a
1800.
1800 RPM. So around there's 1800 RPM. We're gonna go Magneto's left, watch for how much it drops. Notice the RPM drops a little bit. It drops by around 100 RPM, so we're still good. Magneto's is still good. And we're gonna go back to both. Brings us to 1800, and then we're gonna go right. Make sure the same drop happens around 100 RPM. It's showing 1700 right now, so when we go back to both, we should see 1800 RPM, and that is indeed the case, so we're good to go. Let's go ahead and bring our throttles back out, release the brakes, and let's take off. So remember, the brakes are down here, or the red button on the bottom left. Release them, get our yoke going, let's go full throttle, and keep ourselves in the center of the runway as we take off. And remember, you need to put a little bit of right rudder to counteract the plane's tendency to swing to the left a little. And watch our airspeed, that's going to be pretty important. Wait till we get to around 60 knots or 55 knots and pull back gently on the yoke, and we're into the air. And just like that, we'll go ahead and aim for almost 1,000 feet per minute of climb. It doesn't really matter how fast you decide to climb, but just make sure you climb, I guess. Alright, so and once we're gonna go ahead and climb to 1,000 feet just so that we're not waiting too long before we get to the cruise and actual landing. So hopefully you guys remembered this much of the checklist till now. We're gonna go ahead and reduce our throttles to around just a little bit, just so we can maintain good climb. And we're almost at 1,000 feet. We're at around 700 feet. Let's keep going a little bit. It should actually be able to climb on its own. So right now I'm letting go of the controls and it's climbing on its own. The vertical speed's a little bit high, looking at around 1,200 feet per minute here. And then the speed will go down a little, and then we'll lose our rate of climb. It'll counteract itself. So anyway, we're at around 1,000 feet. This is a good place to level off. We're gonna bring our throttles down to around 2,000 RPM and practice cruising. So remember, this is the cruise stage. We wanna push the nose down a bit till we get to 0 FPM, feet per minute. And if we let go of the controls and notice that the plane is climbing slightly, we can adjust our trims. So notice the plane seems to be climbing on its own a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little pitch trim down, and that should bring the nose back to 0 FPM, feet per minute. And just like that, we can maintain good cruise. All right. Practice turns a little bit. Banking to the right, get a nice view of Seattle, the greater Seattle area. I believe, is this Seattle Airport in front of us? Oh, you might actually notice if you bank to the right a little bit, you should see Seattle Airport. Yep, if you bank to the right after takeoff, you can actually see Seattle Airport ahead of you, just like that. But we're just gonna go ahead and turn around like this. And yeah, so while you're doing this, while you're practicing cruising and maneuvering and banking around, we're going to start going over the landing procedures that we do once we have decided to get our airplane going for landing. So let's go ahead and pause the sim and get some slides going. All right, so welcome to this lesson 7, obviously. Third installment of the checklist series, in which we are talking about landing. So how do we get to the ground safely and economically is the big question. When we're cruising, after we've taken off and we're cruising, we're probably going pretty fast, right? So that we can get to the destination we want to go to in as little time as possible. That's the whole point of flying. We want to go somewhere faster, and the air helps us do that. Airplanes help us go faster. And that's actually the fundamental thing we're going to look at when we talk about landing. So we could just land, right? A few weeks ago in our basic full flight lesson, we just banked the plane around, lined up with the runway, descended on our... Is descended the past tense? Descended on our own, and just touched down with not much to worry about, right? So why do we need detailed landing procedures? Why do we need this third installment of the checklist? Well, as you know, airplanes are going fast. Airplanes are in the sky, we're flying pretty fast, and runways have limited length. So if we want to get back to the ground safely, we want to be able to make sure that we can land such that we don't take the entire runway to land. We don't want to overrun the runway when we land, because that puts the surrounding areas in danger, obviously. We don't want to go running into some neighborhoods. So we need to slow down, right? That's the whole point of our detailed landing procedure. We want to be able to land as slow as we can, but remember that when we're flying slower, we're also not generating as much lift, and if you're not generating enough lift, you risk your plane just falling uncontrollably. So you want to make sure you can land slow while having enough lift to land smoothly. So that when you go and do the flare, remember the flare, when you bring your nose up slightly just before touchdown, you have enough lift to do that and make a smooth landing. So slow, but enough lift. How do we do that? Complicated question-ish. And this is where we talk about the one critical control surface that we haven't actually gotten much into yet, but that we are finally going over today, the fraps. Flaps, whatever. You can call it fraps, flaps, whatever you want. Yeah, so this will be a lot like the second lesson where we went over physics, except this time I'm just going to draw you simple airfoil. Remember the... Oh, it's probably a good idea to check that your drawing tools work before you start drawing. So remember what an airfoil looks like, right? An airfoil is just the cross section of a wing. So let me take a look at it. Oh wow, we have a lot of things open here. There we go. Remember what the side of a wing looks like. Remember the shape of a wing. You see this curve right here? This curve right here? So that's what I'm going to go ahead and draw. Let's see if our thing works now. There we go. Alright. So, as you remember, we have our wings shaped like this. Oh wow, that was pretty bad. Our wings are shaped roughly like this. Right? This is how we're generating lift. Remember? Air comes, gets diverted over the wings like this. And as a result, we have less air on top of the wing than below the wing. So the air below the wing wins the arm wrestle and pushes the wing up. That's how we're generating lift. This is something we went over in our second lesson. But now we want to be able to go slow while having enough lift. How do we do that, right? If air is flowing like this, how do we do that? Well, there is another way of generating lift that we haven't really touched upon as a key source of lift, but can be used to generate lift. It's the air that's being shot down this way, right? The air that's coming off the wing like this and being thrust downward like this. Remember, if you were to like take your hands and push against a wall, you feel the reaction, right? You feel yourself being pushed back. Similarly, when this wing here is taking all this air and then shoving it down like that, it's going to feel the reaction going up. Simple as that. So that's something we can take advantage of when we want to fly slowly while also generating lift. And that's where we call flaps. That's where our good friend flaps comes in. Notice how our airfoil or the wing is shaped like this? Well, if instead we add a little flap that has this steep downward angle at the back. If we do this, what happens is the airflow gets directed downward even more. So instead of just this, it goes like this, like almost straight down, like this. More of that air is being pushed directly downward, so we're getting more lift as a result of this little flap in the back being extended downward. But you know what else flaps do? They help us slow down. Why? Because notice how this airfoil or this wing here is pretty smooth, right? Air can come in and choose a direction. It can go this way or it can go this way. It's pretty smooth, right? So let's follow this path of air. I'm gonna color green. Let's follow this path of air right here. Notice when it hits this flap, it's suddenly gonna have to change direction. It's like this all of a sudden. There's a sudden obstacle that the air coming below the wing has to meet and get redirected like this. And this sudden obstacle is what we call drag, the obstacle of free moving airflow. And that, as a result, pushes against our wing backward like this. You see all this air coming like this? It pushes against the wing like this and resists our forward motion. So in turn, this causes us to slow down. And this causes us to increase lift. So that's what flaps do. They increase lift while slowing us down. And with that, we have solved the problem of how to get back to the airport safely. Being slow enough so that we don't use up more runway than we need to, but having enough lift to make sure we land smoothly.
If you want a quick and dirty explanation of flaps and how to remember it, it's pretty much make wing bigger, lift go up, drag go up. That's all you need to remember.
Yeah, how about you want to type that in the chat for me, just in case?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. Make wing bigger, lift go up, drag go up. Easy.
Yeah, so let's get back into the slides here. So that forms the basis of our landing procedure here, because when we land, we're actually, most of the problems I guess we're dealing with is with flaps, because flaps on a Cessna 172 actually slow you down a lot. And you'll notice, so I'm gonna go ahead and unpause the sim, and let's go ahead and start turning back towards the airport. Yeah. I'm sorry?
I was gonna say you had the slides going over the stream, but you removed them just in time.
Yeah. Alright, thanks for reminding me though. So
yeah, no worries.
We have Renton Municipal back there, that's where we just took off from, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn back towards there, just like that. And we'll bank slowly, get a nice view of the scenery, the trees, and the buildings. Not that X-Plane scenery is actually that interesting, but I don't know. Look at all these empty roads. Look at this. Roads that have nothing on them. I love that. Oh, also be careful. You should pay attention, because when you bank left, your plane banks more than you want it to. So anyway, there's the airport right there. You can see the little gray runway, airstrip runway right there. So that's what we want to aim for. Now, when we're ready to start descending, what we want to do is pull the throttle back to around 1500 RPM. 1500 RPM. Looks good. And what you'll notice is when you pull your throttle back, your plane's not going to generate as enough lift and therefore start descending. But if your plane doesn't start descending immediately, use a little bit of trim. Just a little bit. But not too much, because otherwise your plane will start falling like crazy. Like kind of like what's happening to me right now. So I'm going to have to pitch trim up so that, notice where we're at around almost 1,000 feet per minute of descent. Just like that. And I probably did not set myself up well for this, because we're really close to the runway. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain a little bit of altitude here and just go around in a circle just so that I can slow down a little bit more and do the rest of this landing procedure. So remember that our airspeed indicator tells us certain airspeed ranges. And right now what we're looking at, we have a thick white region on our airspeed indicator, and this tells us the speeds that we're allowed to start extending flaps. So you can see our airspeed is right at the cusp of it, around 86 knots or so. So let's go ahead and keep slowing down, get into that thick white range. And now that we've hit it, we can start extending our first notch of flaps. So this is the slider on the right side of X-Plane Mobile. Go ahead and slide it down one notch. And it's this thing right here, it goes down, and the first thing you'll notice, your plane starts shooting up. That's because in a Cessna, the flaps are actually pretty powerful. They generate a lot more lift than they do drag. So your plane just starts shooting up, which is why you'll need to learn to counteract it a little bit by pushing down on the nose, just slightly. And also be careful, your speed can go down a lot when you start climbing like that, which happened to me. Notice I went from 80 knots to like 60 knots. You don't want that to happen either. So make sure you keep your speed up as you're doing it. Like I said, the flaps lever in a Cessna 172 is located down here on the right side, and you'll notice there are numbers next to it. Namely, there's a 10 here, which shows us 10 degrees. So if we look back at the flaps drawing here, let's erase all this junk. Notice that our flaps are down here at an angle. So if our wings were previously, I'm gonna color it in green. Our wings shape was previously like this. Now we've extended it downward by a certain angle. We've extended our flaps downward by a certain angle indicated by that. And that's all this tells us. That's all these numbers mean. 10 degrees means the flaps have been extended downward by 10 degrees relative to a straight wing. So the angle we expect to see between here and here is 10 degrees. So, ready to keep going. I'm gonna go ahead and unpause and continue our descent. Bring our throttle down to around 1500 RPM and keep descending. And notice if you're descending correctly, you will see that your speed roughly maintains itself. So you're not really speeding up or slowing down too much. You're just descending normally. Airport's back there. So I'm gonna start turning a little bit, get back to the airfield. What else was on the slide? I know we're talking a lot about flaps, but
There was a little checklist and the PAPI lights and how to keep your pitch and power in check and how to flare properly around touchdown.
all right. We will get to that just a second.
Mhm.
So, all right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you, Raj, take over the landing checklist, the detailed landing checklist part, but I just wanted to give you an introduction to flaps just so you know what's going on. We're gonna start lining ourselves up with the runway, and to take us the rest of the flight, I'll have you, Raj, take it away.
Cool. So, a quick checklist that you'll have to keep in mind as you go in for a landing. Now, this one's kind of difficult to do in the sim, but make sure your seats and seat belts are adjusted and locked in a comfortable position so that...
Only kind of difficult.
Right, yeah, just a little difficult. But yeah, just make sure that you have proper reach and you can control everything properly if you're in a real plane. Keep that in check, and then as you come in for landing, make sure that your mixture is full rich, and then you need to make sure that your carb heat is on. And then turn on the landing lights.
Carb heat? Is that a switch here? I don't actually see a carb heat switch here.
Carb heat switch should be somewhere around the center console, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I don't think the Cessna I have here does not have a carb heat switch. Which is pretty interesting.
That is concerning. Oh, it should be, I think, next to the mixture lever to the right.
Here.
To the left
it is there.
throttle.
It is there. My apologies.
Right, there it is.
Talking about... So next to the flaps lever, actually... Wait, no, that's cabin heat, not carb heat. I read that wrong. Yeah. You mean the air...
Oh, never mind.
There's nothing here.
No, that's the static airport, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess this plane doesn't have carb heat. Fun. Okay. But yeah, if you have carb heat, turn that on. But yeah, so as you're aligned... as you align yourself with the runway, your job is to control your altitude using your power, not pitch angle. So when you're taking off, to control how fast you're climbing or descending, you use your yoke. You push it in or you pull it out. But you don't do that during landing. So your job is to keep the nose of the plane perfectly level with the horizon and use how much power you're applying to control your rate of descent. So you're still streaming the slides.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Right. So as you come in, you're gonna see lights next to the runway more often than not. These are called the PAPI lights. What they stand for is Precision Approach Path Indicator Lights. So what they tell you...
Doesn't have one?
Oh no, does this runway not have PAPI lights?
No, it does not. Oh my god,
Oh, no. Do you think you could...
horrible luck with choosing airports that do or do not.
Oof.
Actually, no, they do. They do. Never mind.
Oh, they do. We just couldn't see them because we weren't lined up, huh?
Yeah. That's something you
Okay,
do have to be
makes
careful
sense.
of. You need to line up with
Yeah,
the runway to see them.
Yep. But pretty much, you'll see PAPI lights, or these are not PAPI lights. They work very similarly, but these are not technically PAPI lights. But what you need to know is they tell you how high or how low you are compared to how high or low you should be. So, say you're coming in for a landing and the lights are all white. All of them are white, like they are right now. what that tells you is your plane is too high above the ground. You need to cut the power a little bit. Again, keeping the nose level, cut the power a little bit so the plane kind of falls back into the glide slope. And the key to finding the right spot is you want 2 red and 2 white. And if you have 8 lights, some runways do have 8 lights, you want half of them to be red and half of them to be white. And that tells you you're right on level. Now, if you have too many red lights, that means you're too low. You want to add some power and kind of climb a little bit. So here's a little rhyme that they say in the aviation community that can kind of help you remember how the PAPI light system works while you're still getting used to it. So you need to remember 2-2 power through, too much white, too much height, too much red, and you'll be dead. So what this means is 2-2 power through, which means if you have 2 white lights and 2 red lights, you're good to go. Just keep doing what you're doing and you will end up in the right spot. And then too much white, too much height. Pretty much if more lights are white than are red, that means you're higher up than you should be. So yeah, just descend. And then too much red, you'll be dead. Now that's a dangerous one, as it says in the rhyme. If you have too many red lights, what it means is you're below the glide slope. You need to add power. And you'll be dead because if you have too much red, you're below the glide slope. So you're gonna come in and touch down before the runway even begins. I mean, depending on how below the glide slope you are. And oftentimes airports have, especially have obstacles around them, or some airports have bodies of water right before the runway threshold, and that's why they say that too much red and you'll be dead. So yeah, just remember that. 2-2 power through, good job, keep doing what you're doing. Too much white, too much height, you're too high. Too much red and you'll be dead. So yeah,
sure,
just
right,
keep that in balance.
Did
I think
I'm pretty sure.
I think Steven told me about something like that before too.
Oh really? Well, anyway,
I mean,
Similar.
Except
it's like 4 red, you're dead.
oh, 4 red, you're dead. There you go. Okay, that was a little different. But yeah, so pretty much it's think of it like balancing a slider. You don't want it to go either in too much in either direction. As you come in for a landing, you want to keep half of them white, half of them red. And it's okay if you get a little off. Just get used to correcting for it by either adding or cutting power.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a balancing act. And then as
I'm gonna demonstrate what
Nikhil comes in for landing, I'll explain the flare.
I'm gonna do a cheat sheet a little bit. So just to explain a little bit of what Roger's doing, I'm giving myself a little more time to. I'm still kind of close to the runway. I'm gonna go a little bit back. Increase my altitude.
Blue mode.
Yeah, let's go. I love cheating in a flight simulator. So wow, we're still really close. Is that far enough? That's still not far
I
enough.
think so. Still not.
Not really. Okay, so just to demonstrate what Roger's talking about, controlling your pitch with your throttle instead of your yoke. We're obviously used to yoke going push down, pull up like that. Except don't do it that insanely, obviously. But how do you use your throttle to control your pitch, right? Well, let's go ahead and pull our throttle back. Oh shoot, you can't see it. So I'm pulling my throttle back right now, as you can see, and the plane starts falling. As expected, push the throttle in a little bit. Plane starts climbing, because when we're speeding up, we're gaining lift. When we're slowing down, we're losing lift. Remember, wings generate lift based on how fast the air is slamming into it. Right. So...
and Nikhil's giving a great demonstration right there by completely pitching up entirely while explaining that's exactly what you're not supposed to do.
Yeah, no, so don't get yourself in this situation. You want to make sure you're doing this as gently as possible. So I'm going to wait till we get to... Okay, there we go.
You know what they say, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, so we're gonna now try do this more stably. So I have my throttle at around 2,000 RPM, and you can see our descent rate is looking pretty good now. We're going pretty stable, and if we pull power back just a little bit, can allow the plane to start falling a little bit any day now. There you go. And once you feel good about your descent rate, like let's say around this much, 400 FPM, need to pull your power back just a little bit. This is kind of how you control your descent. So this takes practice, obviously. A lot of throttle moving around, and you want to be careful with it. You want to do it slowly, just to make sure Oh, you can't actually see my throttle movements. Huh? There we go. There's my throttle movements. You want to make sure you're not doing it too fast. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start lining myself up with the runway just so we can complete the landing checklist. And let's go ahead and look for those PAPI lights. And since we're at around 75 knots, I'm going to go ahead and extend the next notch of flaps, which in a Cessna 172 is 20 degrees, which will show 20 degrees on the bottom right here. We're going to extend those, push the nose down a little bit to make sure the plane doesn't go skyrocketing like Elon Musk's,
I think you should, you can also start cutting the power as you add more flap, because as you add more flap, you need less airspeed to keep the airplane up, so you can cut some power as you add flap too.
Yeah, because remember, your flaps are generating more lift for you. So the further down they're further extended. Actually, I want to show it from the outside. So look at the flaps moving. And let's go down to 20 degrees, just like that. There you go. So we're coming up on the runway, and we're starting to get an idea of these PAPI lights. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the power back just so we can increase our descent rate here, because it seems we're high. So airports will have two kinds of PAPI lights. Might be able to show you the other one. Often smaller airports will have the two lights front
so
and back.
it'll be a stack of two lights. It'll be two lights up front, two lights in the back, and they'll be red and white again. Other airports will have four lights next to each other. And then some bigger airports, which can't really put an ILS or like one of those big boy landing systems, two sets of PAPI lights next to each other on either side of the runway. You'll have 8 lights, but no matter what configuration it is, all you need to remember is keep them half and half. Keep them balanced. Too much red, you're too low. Too much white, you're too high.
I don't know why they don't show up. I'm gonna figure out why my simulator doesn't show the lights properly. There you go. There you go. Now you can kind of see 2 lights there, 2 lights up ahead, and they're showing two all white, so we're too much height. Gotta pull our power back.
You think you could zoom in for us real quick?
If I zoom in, it actually tanks my computer's performance. I don't know why.
Oh yeah, no worries. We'll see them up
But you
close.
can kind of see, got 2 pairs of white lights going on back there. So we're gonna go ahead and descend until we're around those 2 red, 2 white. And also, once your speed gets to around 60 knots, you can go ahead and extend your final notch of flaps, which in a Cessna is 30 degrees, I want to say. 30 degrees. Doesn't actually say on the flap lever
I'm pretty
itself.
sure.
So, looks like we're still too high. Wait till we get to 2 red, 2 white. Let's keep going down. And need a now. Oh no, the lights are starting to disappear. Gotta make this. There we go. There's our 2 red, 2 white.
Perfect.
So once we get to 2 power through, which we are right now, a good descent rate to keep is around 500 feet per minute, minus 500 feet per minute. That's a pretty good descent rate. But as you get close to the runway...
Do you think you could pause real quick and then get rid of the slides?
Oh, sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
So, yeah, once you have your 2 red, 2 white, a good descent rate is around minus 500 feet per minute. And control your speed to make sure you're going at around 60 knots. That would be good. And as you get close to the runway, which we are right now, you don't really need to pay attention to the PAPI lights much, since you will be able to pretty much gauge with your own eyesight. Usually you'll be able to gauge in good weather.
Yeah. Also, the thing is, really quick, the glide slope. Do you think you could pause again, Nikhil?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. The glide slope is like this. So when you're farther back, you have more room to mess up, and you have a bigger margin, more tolerance to screw up and still correct yourself. And as you get closer and closer, that triangle gets smaller and smaller. So even tiny adjustments will throw the PAPI lights off. So as you come in, don't try focusing on the PAPI lights as much, because they get extremely sensitive the closer you get. So once you get to a certain point, you'll be able to judge your height and your descent rate and where you're gonna go, and just take it from there. Yeah. So pretty much all I'm saying is the closer you get, the PAPI lights get more sensitive to the point where even like acceptable differences in altitude will show all white or all red sometimes. But yeah, just keep that in mind.
I just realized I could draw it. I have the power.
Oh, yeah, that would be
That's
helpful.
on.
I was
Yeah.
doing weird signaling with my hands.
No worries. So,
The diagram would be nice.
yeah, I'm getting it. So, as you can see here, these are our glide slopes. So, jeez. So we have our glide slopes as lines here. So these are our glide slopes, just like this. Just like this. And you can see when we have 2 red, 2 white, we'll be aiming right at a desired landing spot, which is, I think, 100 feet after the beginning of the runway.
I think for bigger airliners, it's 1,000.
Yeah, so it depends on every airport. And obviously,
Actually-
if you have four reds here, your plane's going into the ditch. You're dead. And if you got
Just want
4
to correct
white,
you real quick. It's
Oh,
glide path, not glide slope.
Oh, glide path. I
Glide
think
slope
it's
is the
for
ILS
ILS
system.
systems, yeah.
yeah. Whoops.
Glide path.
Honestly, they feel interchangeable, but that's okay.
They do.
It is interchangeable until you do IFR and they're different because the glide slope and glide path are completely different depending on which one you follow. If you follow if you're doing an instrument arrival and you're going on the glide slope, when you go visual, your PAPIs will not indicate 2 red, 2 whites. It'll be different.
That is true. Sometimes you'll be flying an ILS, which we'll cover later. It's pretty advanced. You don't need to know that right now, but I have noticed that you'll be flying an ILS, you come in, your PAPIs will be way off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Steven's
even
right.
the approach plates even state on the bottom, it says the visual glide slope indicator and glide path are not the same.
All right,
As
so
a
we should
warning,
complete the
perhaps.
landing a little bit here. So, all right. So as you start to get over the runway like this, you don't need PAPI lights anymore. And as you can notice, for me, they actually disappeared. Can't see the lights anymore. So now all we're aiming for is the touchdown zone. Touchdown zones on runways are just.
Oh, those
these-
are 1,000 feet in. Those are
Yeah.
the 1,000-foot markers.
So the touchdown zones, usually what we're aiming for, they're these solid, thick rectangles on the sides of the runway. They'll always look like this. These are what pilots usually aim for when they're about to touch down. And I think we'll make it.
I think so.
All right.
So
getting
as
there.
Nikhil comes in and he starts descending, when he gets to about, I don't know, like 10 feet or so,
Right,
in a Cessna, he's gonna start pulling the power very gently. Don't cut it out, you'll slam into the ground. But gently start pulling the power and pulling the nose up to kind of cut the descent rate a little bit, so that you can touch down smoothly. That was nice, Nikhil.
Yeah, I actually just did that. So let's get a replay going.
Right. So you'll see when Nikhil cuts the power and pulls the nose up so that the rear wheels touch down first.
I'm gonna make this go slower. There we go. So as you can see, when we're coming into land, we're pretty straight. We're flying pretty straight so far. And if I any day now. There you go. As I get closer to the ground, you'll start to see the angle of the airplane increase a little bit. And as Yuvraj mentioned, this is called a flare. So I pulled my power back, and then I
I
raised
think-
the nose a little bit.
Transition.
Not to be all snobby or anything. Yeah, exactly. It's called a flare in bigger airliners and jets and stuff. In a general aviation plane, it's called a transition, because you're transitioning from the sky to the ground.
Actually, another reason why it's called transition is because you're going from engines at 1500 RPM to idle, whereas an airliner goes from, they don't go to idle until like 20 feet above the ground. They keep their power in for multiple reasons. One is that if they need to go around, if they go toga, it takes a couple of seconds to spool up, and they want to reduce that time. That's
I think
one
in an
reason why.
A320 from idle to full thrust, it takes 5 whole seconds.
Yeah, and another reason is that they don't land at idle because they don't land at stall speed, whereas in most general aviation aircrafts they land at stall speed. That's why you hear the little stall warning horn going off. That sounds like a, I don't know, a
squealing
bird
duck.
dying. I really don't know what to say.
Actually, I want to see if we can get
I mean,
that going. I wanna...
they designed it to sound like that so that it immediately grabs the pilot's attention. So that wasn't an accident.
And then in newer planes, you have like a electronic voice scream at you saying stall,
Stall.
Oh,
stall.
there you go.
Stall.
You can hear it. Hold on. Let me increase the speed a little bit. So I'm gonna increase the simulator's volume and let's see if we can get that stall going. Just like that. So we're going really slow right now, so we'll be expecting a stall right now. But let me get close to the ground. Let's dive into the ground a bit. Don't do that in real life, obviously. And okay, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the power back, and then I'm gonna start pulling up on my nose a lot. There you go. You heard that? That squealing? That was the stall warning. Obviously, don't land the way that I just demonstrated. That'll give you a rough landing, as you can see here. Pretty rough landing. Minus 257 feet per minute on the touchdown. That's pretty bad for a Cessna, so don't do that.
And I just want to add one thing. There's a saying in the aviation community about landings that goes, any landing you can walk away from is a good landing, and any landing that the plane can fly away from is a great landing. So what you want to take away from that is that if you don't get smooth landings right off the bat, don't worry about it at all, because it does seem relatively easy in theory, and you might start practicing landings and you're like, oh, I can't get this right, and all I want to say is don't worry about it. It took us ages to get our landings properly done. When we first started, we we didn't do landings, we did crashes. So yeah, if you're practicing landings right now, just starting out, and you can't get it perfect, don't worry about it at all.
Yeah. And with that, on that note, we did reach the end of our lessons, 5:15. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to the shutdown procedures, but that is okay. We'll have a lot of time to discuss those. There's not much to the shutdown. It's mainly just turning everything off. So we really wanted to get you to understand how to land an airplane and why we follow the landing procedures that we do, just so that it all makes sense, the way that pilots in general actually fly any airplane. So this concludes our checklist series. Almost concludes. We didn't go over the shutdown, obviously, but everything we talked about, from taxiing, takeoff, cruising, and landing, is something that all pilots who fly any kind of airplane, be it an airliner for the airlines or in these small planes, general aviation, these are all fundamentals that every pilot knows, and even aerospace engineers understand as the ways airplanes nowadays function when they're going and building airplanes. The airplanes need to be able to do these things when they're flying. So with that, concludes our series. We didn't see any questions in the chat. There were no questions in the chat, right? I checked the forum as well.
Nope.
And remember, you can always ask us questions off stream as well through our email, flyprojectaviate@gmail.com. And with that, I have nothing else to say. Anyone else have anything to say?
I think we're good.
All right, take care, everyone.
Enjoy your break, everybody.
Enjoy your break, exactly. Yep, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.